tonight's class is going to be part 2. There we go. Part 2 of the Call of Sinai. However, this week's class will be a very practical, hands-on, realistic journey into the holiday of Shavuos. And this year is a unique year in that this year we don't have the pressure of going to shul like we may have had in other years, where there was more of a focus on the coming to synagogue and on the learning together and all that. Hello, all of you who are watching us on Facebook. But this year the focus is going to be on Shavuos at home. And in fact, it might be too late now to change the title on Facebook. Really, that's what we should have called, not Call of Sinai 2, but Shavuos at home. Anyway, it makes no difference. This is falling down. So let's talk tonight about the objective, the plan for tonight's class is to have an in-depth discussion on to the story of Shavuos, but practical. How me and you can practically do this at home in the right way to celebrate properly the way we should. So join me. We're going to go through hopefully the entire holiday. We'll cover a lot of different topics and get a lot of clarity in what it is that we should be doing in order to celebrate in the healthy, proper way. So the first thing that happens on Shavuos is actually before Shavuos. The first thing that happens on Shavuos is before Shavuos when we prepare for the holiday. Now, obviously, every holiday, I always like that. Every holiday is a very, very important preparation to buy the right foods, to buy dairy foods, to go shopping, to prepare a holiday spirit in our home. I want to tell you that although Shavuos is a less widely known and less observed holiday than perhaps Pesach and some of the other holidays that are very discussed and very widely celebrated, Shavuos is a very, very important and very special holiday. Last week's class, we discussed at great length the spiritual significance, the essence of the holiday. And so now I want to tell you, almost like we did for the Pesach Seder, where we did a do-it-yourself class and went through in a very practical, hands-on way. I hope to do the same thing today. So the first thing is you have to prepare, and we'll get to Yizkor too. The first thing is you need to prepare for the holiday by everything you need to do. It actually says it's a mitzvah to buy your wife new clothing or jewelry or something for her to be in the mood of celebrating the holiday as well. There's one special thing, a unique thing that you should buy before the holiday, which is unique to the holiday of Shavuos. Many do it before other holidays, but it's not necessarily a custom of Israel, and that is to buy flowers. On Shavuos, it is a special, even if some people buy flowers every week for Shabbat, or they buy for holidays, but buying flowers for the holiday of Shavuos is a age-old Jewish custom. And the reason is because, many reasons, but primarily because the Jewish people witnessed a miracle happen on Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai was not a naturally beautiful mountain. In fact, as the famous song goes, the mountain of Sinai felt unworthy of receiving the Torah. It wasn't big, it wasn't tall, it wasn't beautiful. It was a plain, simple, regular mountain in the desert. And on the night of Shavuos, God performed one of the many miracles that happened with the giving of the Torah. And actually, the entire mountain of Sinai miraculously blooms overnight. And in the morning, this small, barren, bare mountain was completely covered in flowers like Mount Sinai, which was what happened. Which, by the way, means that this virtual background behind me, although it's pretty dramatic with the light coming out, representing God coming from the clouds, now that I'm thinking about it, is actually not a factually correct rendering, because the mountain of Sinai was not a desert, although it was a desert mountain. A miracle happened that this mountain in the desert became full of flowers, full of beautiful colors, and etc. And therefore, there is a custom to decorate our homes and to decorate our shuls with flowers. I know that in my wife's home, this is a very special thing. They're very into it. My wife every year is like very into the flowers she gets for shul, and I have to buy flowers for the home. My father wasn't as into buying the flowers as necessarily her father was. So God willing, this class will remind me that before the holiday begins, to stop in Publix, or you can order online. Get yourself some flowers to bring not only to make the holiday beautiful, but specifically to remember the miracle of the mountain becoming full of flowers, in order for it to be a beautiful mountain to receive the Torah. Good evening to all those that are wishing me good evening. Thank you, and the same to you as well. Okay, Thursday night, candle lighting. Oh, I should have had it with me, right? If I'm not mistaken, it's at 7:50. If I'm not mistaken, because we made a booklet with the candle lighting times and all that. Candle lighting on Thursday night, this Thursday night, is 7:50. And then we dive in the evening prayers, and we have Kiddush, we have a meal. Now, although I'm not going to get too nitty-gritty into the details how we do this, I'm going to cover a broad range of important things to know, and whoever can gain out of whatever I say, well, you never know when you're teaching, especially like to just a virtual audience, you never know who will gain from which detail that I'm going to mention, so I'll try and say many. Normally, on Shabbat or on a holiday, you are allowed to daven early and bring in Shabbat early. So, for example, Shabbat comes in now, the summer, 7:50 is candle lighting, and it gets even later in July, August. And someone posted on Facebook, all right, 7:49, thank you. The second night, then, is 7:50 probably. 7:49 is candle lighting. So normally on a Friday night, you're allowed to light candles earlier and pray the evening services earlier and bring in Shabbat early. We have that ability to be, we call mosif, to add into the holiness and to add to Shabbos. The only exception to that rule is Shavuos. On the Shavuos, which is this Thursday night, we are not allowed to pray the evening service earlier than nightfall for one very simple but very important reason. And that is, what is the date of Shavuos? The date of Shavuos is always going to be 49, on the 50th day, 49 days after the second day of Pesach. On the 50th day is Shavuos. Now, normally, we bring in the holiday earlier, so we're taking away a little bit of Friday, and we're adding to Shabbos. So instead of Shabbos being 25 hours from sunset to nightfall, we make it 26 hours. However, if on Shavuos you're going to add to the holiness of Shavuos and start the holiday not at 7:49, but at 7 o'clock, you're taking away from the 49th day of the Omer. And now that 49th day is not complete. And because we cannot do that, we have to have 49 complete days of the Omer in order to then come to the 50th day, which is Shavuos. We are not allowed to start praying early, definitely not to make Kiddush before, I don't have the time, before, whatever time the holiday, whatever time, Ari, what time is Shabbos over? Probably 8:50, something like that. We're going to find, I'm sure someone will post in a second what time you can make Kiddush, which is whatever time when Shabbos will be over. We don't make Kiddush earlier than that. Okay, so we pray the evening service, we make Kiddush. Obviously, the Kiddush is not your regular Friday night Kiddush because it's not Friday night. It's actually a holiday. So if you have a prayer book at home, any prayer book you'll open up, or you can go to our website. If you need it, I can send you a text, and you'll make Kiddush for the holiday. Of course, when we say Kiddush, we make the Shehechiyanu. The woman makes Shehechiyanu, the blessing Shehechiyanu, V'kimanu, V'hegiyanu, Lazman Hazeh. That God, thank you, God, for bringing us to this day, this special occasion. The men will say when we make Kiddush, and we say Shehechiyanu, we make the blessing that the God is Mekadesh, Hazman, we sanctify the holy day of Shavuos. We do not sing Shalom Aleichem or Eishes Chai. That is only for Shabbat, not for a holiday. And after 8:47 is when we can make Kiddush and we can start our meal. Now, that happens to be very late, but there's no rush. Why is there no rush? Because we have a custom to stay up the entire night of Shavuos learning Torah. So, why do we stay up all night learning Torah? There are a number of reasons for this very, very well-known and very well-kept tradition. The primary reason, and we're not going to get into many of the reasons tonight, the primary reason is because when the Jewish people were invited by God for the very first time to receive the Torah, you know what happens? They fell asleep. Now, there's actually a beautiful explanation of the Rebbe why they went to sleep before the giving of the Torah, how sleeping is on a higher spiritual level. I don't want to get distracted. I have a lot that I want to cover tonight. But the fact is, the Jews were sleeping. And therefore, early in the morning, when Hashem comes to give the Jewish people the Torah, guess what happens? He comes and we're all, as we say in Yiddish, we're chrapping. We're out cold, we're sleeping. And therefore, God is upset. And we have to make a tikkun, we have to make a rectification for the fact that we were sleeping. There's a verse in Isaiah that when God is upset at the Jews, he tells the prophet Isaiah, Yeshayahu, that why did I arrive? And there was no man. Karasi ve'ein oine. I called and there was no one to answer my call. Very famous words. Karasi ve'ein oine. There was no man, no one answered my call. Meaning, imagine the groom comes to his wedding and the bride not to be found. Can you imagine the panic that the groom is going to have? So basically, Hashem came to marry the Jewish people. He comes to the chuppah, to our Sinai, early in the morning, and we were not yet there. This is the reason, by the way, why there was thunder and lightning. It was the original alarm clock to wake us all up to come running to the mountain of Sinai. And therefore, because we were sleeping, therefore we have to study all night to make up for the fact that we fell asleep that first time. The other reason given, primary reason given for studying Torah all night, is because it's like we're getting ready for our wedding day. As discussed last week's class, Shavuos is the day of our wedding with God. Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, describes it as Yom Chupaseh, the day of his chuppah, the day of his wedding canopy. And therefore, because we're getting ready for our wedding, a bride does not sleep on the night before her wedding. She's way too excited. She's way too eager, and she's getting ready. She has to get up early, and they have to put on their makeup, and put on her perfume, and put on her eyeliner, and put on her mascara, and put on, I don't know what else goes on a person's face. There's a lot of things to put on one person's face. I've seen, Baruch Hashem, enough weddings, watching the family, the woman part of the family, getting ready. So a lot of things go on their faces. Thank God men have a much easier life than women do. Baruch Hashem. Thank God. I don't have to sit for an hour, and I share having someone touch me. I don't know if I'll be able to handle it. And so therefore, we prepare ourselves by studying Torah like a woman getting ready to get married. So that's the reason why we stay up all night. Now, there's no obligation of what to study. There are a few different customs. In Chabad, as other Hasidic groups as well, we have a custom that on the night of Shavuos, we read a book called Tikkun Leil Shavuos. I actually ran to go get it from my bookcase. I didn't see it, and I was just popping my head. Tikkun Leil Shavuos is a book. The word tikkun, by the way, is actually fits both of these explanations. In Aramaic, we say a tikkun means like a fixing, a rectification. So tikkun Leil Shavuos means we're making a tikkun, we're making a rectification on the night of Shavuos, when we fell asleep 3,300 and whatever years ago. We're making a rectification for the fact that we fell asleep then. Good evening, Beth. The other translation of the word tikkun is tikkuna, which means jewelry. Now, Aramaic actually explains that the sfirot are called tikkunim because they are like the jewelry through which a person expresses themselves. So this is the second idea of studying all night, that we're like the bride beautifying herself and adorning herself with all of her jewelry and all of her perfume and, all the stuff that go along. So by studying all night, we prepare ourselves, we purify ourselves and prepare ourselves for the wedding that will take place when we hear the reading of the Ten Commandments and we formally accept the wedding, so to say, together with God. So there's a few different customs of what to read or what to study during the night of Shavuos. The Chabad custom is to read a book called Tikkun Leil Shavuos. This book has the first and last 3 verses of each and every single one of the 53 parshiot, the parshas of the Torah. In addition, it has many of the exciting chapters, the Ten Commandments, the Az Yashir, the Song of the Splitting of the Sea, the Shema. There's a whole bunch of different kind of prominent paragraphs of the Shema of the Torah that are all included in the text of the Tikkun HaShavuos, in addition to the first, the story of the binding of Isaac, in addition to the beginning, the 3 verses, and the final verses of each and every parsha. It has the first and last verses of each one of the other 24 books of Tanakh. Each one of the books of the prophet, of the writing, the first chapter or the first verses and the last verses. It has the first and last Mishnah of each one of the 60 volumes of the Talmud. The Shas, the 60 volumes of the Mishnah, the Talmud, each and every single tractate, the first and last Mishnah. It has a whole bunch of sections from the Zohar, including the beginning and the end of it, but also some special parts, including the entire Sefer Yetzirah, the entire book of formation. It has a list of each and every single one of the 613 commandments. We read each one of the 613 commandments, including the verse from which we learn that commandment. So we'll say, whatever the commandment is, as it says, I'll quote the verse. And then it also has the reading of the book of Ruth, which I'm going to talk about in 1 minute. So that's a lot of reading to do. That takes about 2-3 hours if you know how to read fast. You still have a whole night. So then you can study whatever it is that your heart desires. Some people like to get deep. Some people, study things that are a little bit more interesting and unique to help you keep up, especially when it's already 2-3 o'clock in the morning. This is going to be much, much harder doing it by yourself. Definitely, I would say to try and stay up at least until after legal midnight. I'm going to check right now what time that is in Coral Springs. At the very, very least, to stay up till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to tell you right now, till 5:07 in the morning is very, very difficult. On Friday, dawn is 5:06 in the morning. And yes, in all of our years, we had people sitting in the shul with me till the morning, till 5 o'clock in the morning. We literally did an all night of studying Torah. But at the very least, if you can't stay up that late, the middle of the night is 1:18 in the morning. Try and stay up if you could, and to study. Okay. Now, I want to talk about the book of Ruth for a few minutes. The book of Ruth is a very, very interesting, famous story of a woman called Ruth. I will very, very briefly repeat and review the story for those that are not familiar with the story. I will just say that different communities have different customs when they read it. In many shuls, in many communities, they actually read the entire book of Ruth at the Bima before the Torah reading of the giving of the Torah on Shavuos Day. It's part of the actual service. Like you have the Haftorah, so they read the entire book of Ruth. That is not the Chabad custom. We do not read it in the synagogue. Our custom is to study it during the night of Shavuos. But either way, in all communities, the book of Ruth is read sometime in the build-up and the lead-up to the giving of the Torah. So let me briefly tell you the story of Ruth in case you're not familiar with it, and then we can discuss briefly, just for 2 minutes, again, not going into it, why this became a very, very well-known, not well-known, but a very important Jewish custom. So Ruth was actually a Moabite princess. She was a Moabite princess, a non-Jewish woman. She somehow met and fell in love with one of the sons of Naomi. So basically you have, let me just, back a second. There was a man, his name was Elimelech. Find over here. I want to read one line, but I think Elimelech was his name. And he was he was one of the judges, and there was a plague. Yeah, here's Elimelech. I have the book in front of me actually. So his name was Elimelech, and he left Israel during a famine that happened. He left to go and find a better place to live. He moves to Moab, and there, him, his wife Naomi, and his two sons. And one of his sons, what happens? He moves away from the Jewish community, gets involved with his non-Jewish girl Ruth. They fall in love, and they marry. Over the course of time, Elimelech passes away, and both of her sons that had married non-Jewish girls pass away. So all you have left now is this widow, Naomi, and her two daughter-in-laws that were originally Moabite girls that were not biologically related to her. And she decided she had no one left in her family. She was going to go back to Israel. She tells her daughter-in-laws, my dear daughter-in-laws, it's been nice knowing you. I'm going to go back to my family to support me in Israel. You still are young. You still are beautiful. Go and find yourself a new husband. Build yourself a life here in Moab. And, good luck to you and only good things. So one of the daughter-in-laws says goodbye. They hug and they kiss and she leaves. However, Ruth, the other one was Orpah. Ruth says, absolutely, I will not go. They go further. And again, she says, my dear daughter-in-laws, please leave. Orpah goes goodbye. Virus daf kaba, and Ruth cleaves to her Jewish mother-in-law. Now, Ruth had already come to appreciate the depth and the beauty and the richness of Judaism, and she had decided that no matter what, she wanted to remain a Jewish woman. Obviously, I'm not getting into the details of the story. There's many commentaries, and if they were Jewish and non-Jewish, they converted. Let's assume that she converted, but she could have converted back and gone back to her family. And Ruth had seen how her people were selfish and mean, and she decided no matter what, even though she was a princess. Here's the chiddush, so to say, the beauty of the story. She came from royalty. Ruth was from a very, very royal. She was a princess. She was rich. She had everything she needed. And for her to travel with her widowed, poor mother-in-law, who is now a social outcast in Israel, you have to understand, her husband left Israel during the famine. So they were not going to be royally welcomed back. And she decided, I want to remain with the Jewish people no matter what. And after a second time of being told to go, so she says to her mother-in-law, please stop urging me to leave you. And this is why I had the book in front of me. I wanted to read these words. They're beautiful, beautiful words. Some of the most famous lines of Tanakh. Ruth tells her mother-in-law, Ki el asher telchi elech, wherever you will go, I will go. Uva asher talini alin, wherever you will sleep, wherever you will lodge, I will lodge. Amech, Ami, your nation is my nation. Elekayich, Elekoi, your God is my God. Ba'asher tamusi, Amos, where you will die, I will die. There I will be buried. Ko yaseh Hashem li, so will God do to me. Ko Yosef, and so he should add, because only ki hamavis, only death will separate beini uvenech, between me and you. Unbelievable words, unbelievable words. And Naomi sees the absolute sincerity of this young woman who was beautiful, who was rich, who had connections, who could have had an easy life staying in Moab. And yet she decided to give it all up to follow her widowed mother-in-law, poor mother-in-law, because she says, and here's the words, Amech, Ami, your nation is now my nation, Elekayich, Elekoi, your God is my God. Beautiful, beautiful words. And therefore, anyway, just to finish the story, I got distracted. I think it's just beautiful. The sentiment's a beautiful part of the story. Anyway, the story continues. They come back to Israel. They're very poor. She comes to a field, and her mother says, go to the field, and you're going to see that you're allowed to collect some of the food that's left over, and you can go and take it. She goes to the field, not knowing that it's a field that belongs to a man called Boaz. Boaz was actually a cousin or a relation of her mother-in-law, and She goes, and Boaz is very kind to her, and he starts to tell her that you can gather all there's the leket. Leket is to gather behind the gleanings that are left behind. You can go and gather them. That's one of the Jewish requirements of a Jewish farmer, that when they're gathering their wheat, whatever gets dropped behind has to be left, called leket. Anyway, then she's about to leave, and Boaz says to her, but there's a payah, there's the corner. The halacha is that when a farmer is harvesting their field, they leave one corner for the poor. He says to wait for the final corner, you can take the payah. And after that, he says to her, you can take the shikha. What's shikha? Shikha is the third requirement on the Jewish farm owner or landowner, that when they're leaving the field, if anything drops behind, that's forgotten, that they didn't collect with them on the way out, that also is left for the poor. Anyway, Boaz is very interested in this very beautiful girl that is collecting the wheat. He finds out that it's the daughter-in-law, the widowed daughter-in-law of actually a relative of his. When Ruth finds out whose field Naomi was in and how Boaz had been so nice to her, so she says to her daughter-in-law, go to Boaz, tell him that he has an obligation to take care of his family. She goes to the field where he's sleeping. She lies down next to him. He wakes up. He says the whole story, and she says to her, she says to Boaz who she is. Anyway, they get married, and Boaz takes care of the family. He supports them. He sustains them. But the point of the whole story is the ending of the story. The very end of the story is how she gives birth to Oved, and Oved gives birth to Yishai, and Yishai gives birth to David. That is really the primary, the official reason why we read the Megillah of Ruth on Shavuos, is because Ruth is the grandmother, the great-grandmother of King David HaMelech, and the yahrzeit, the day of passing of King David, is on the Shavuos. So in remembrance of the yahrzeit of David HaMelech, we read the Megillah, the story of Ruth, which is the lineage of where King David comes from. Now, there are obviously many other reasons why we read the Megillah of Ruth, because we just wanted to remember the fact that Shavuos is the yahrzeit of King David. There's many other books we could read, especially Tehillim, which was authored by King David himself. Like, why do you need to read about his great-grandmother? Just read the books that he himself authored. And there's many connections to the holiday of Shavuos and reading the Megillah of Ruth as a preparation for the giving of the Torah. Number one is that this gives us a picture of how the poor people were treated. Part of being a Jew is not just to be a Torah scholar. It's not just to be well educated and well versed in the details of kosher and not kosher, and the laws of ritual purity and the laws of charity, but it's to act in a kind way, the way Boaz acted, the way he was kind and giving to the stranger that just arrived in his land, and he's telling her, take more food, let me help you, let me help your family. This is the way a Jew has to behave. But that's also just another thing. The real, at least in my own, what talks to me anyway, is that two parts to the story. Number one, the Gemara says that, or the Yalkut, maybe the Medrash says, that the reason why we read this story before we accept the Torah is to tell us that the Torah can only be acquired through poverty and suffering. Not poverty, you have to be poor, but a lack of focus on my physical pleasure, and instead a spiritual focus on what is truly important to me in my life. What was amazing about Ruth is that she had clarity, tremendous clarity, on the fact that I'm not looking for a life of physical comfort or a life of physical, creature comfort, as we call it, which she could have very easily had if she would have remained in Moab with her wealthy family. And instead, she gives it all up, because to her, there is absolute clarity that what is important to me in my life is the ability to connect to Hashem, to have a life of meaning, of kindness, of goodness, hence the famous words, Your nation is my nation. Your God is my God. That is the epitome of being able to receive the Torah. First requires that absolute commitment, an absolute dedication, where a person is willing to be poor, meaning that it's not about what they want or what gives them pleasure. It's about what's true and what's right and what's holy. Along those same lines, but from a slightly different perspective, is the fact that on Shavuos, every Jew is really a convert. Shavuos, the day before Shavuos, is the day when the Jewish people finalize their conversion process and formally become the Jewish people. When the Jews were living in Egypt, although we were technically, we were Bnei Yisrael, we were the sons of Jacob, and we were the biological descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Jewish people, by large, were not spiritually connected to God. We were not studying Torah, we were not doing the mitzvahs. In order for us to receive the Torah and become, as we discussed last week, married with God, we had to undergo our own conversion process, which entailed three things. All the Jews had to be, all the men had to be circumcised. Everyone had to go to the mikvah, which is clearly one of the things that God told the Jewish people to do before they received the Torah. God said they should go wash their clothing, and they should go and immerse themselves to cleanse themselves and spiritually purify themselves for the giving of the Torah. And the third thing is to bring a sacrifice, which they do on the fifth day, the day before Shavuos. They bring a sacrifice. They are sprinkled with the blood of the sacrifice, which is a form of a covenant. We have just like the blood of the milah, of the bris, also the blood of the sacrifice that's put on the altar and put on them. That's when they say Na'aseh v'nishma, which we discussed last week. So Shavuos is the day that the Jewish people declared our commitment to God. It's the day that we said to God, you will be our God forever and ever. We are committing ourselves to you. We are giving ourselves over to you. You will be our God. Whatever you say, whatever it is, Na'aseh, we'll do it. Then v'nishma, then we'll try and understand more. So Shavuos, it's the holiday of the convert. And the most famous, most iconic of all converts in Judaism is Ruth. I don't know the most, there's several famous converts in Judaism, but Ruth, you have Onkelos, for example, but Ruth is definitely the most iconic. And the verse that I read to you before is the icon of her, of her identity, that declaration of God's oneness. And therefore, without going any further on to this point, this is why why we read this and focus on this on Shavuos, to remember the commitment of the converts and really the commitment that the rest of us have to have as well, that we need to reinvigorate and re-arouse, reinvigorate is the right word, within ourselves, this connection to Hashem like a convert has. Anyway, that's regarding the book of Ruth and the reading of Megillah at night. Now, studying at night. Now let's go to the day, Friday morning, the actual day of Shavuos and the reading of the Ten Commandments. Obviously, it's a holiday, so all the laws of a holiday and the Shabbat apply. No electricity, no driving, no going to work. It is a regular chag like any other chag. The morning prayers are holiday prayers. We do not put on tefillin. We do put on a talisman, no tefillin. The plan, this is not really announcement time, but the plan is that we will be opening our shul Friday morning for services. It is only for adults that are healthy and have no underlying illnesses, etc. So we actually published a lengthy guidelines on our website. I actually had wanted to send out an email today, but I didn't realize it was Memorial Day and my secretary wasn't here and come to our website emails. So tomorrow, God will send out an email with all the Shavuos giveaways that you can take, and I'll talk about that in a second. Included in there the guidelines. Those that are feeling healthy, don't have a fever, don't have a cough, etc., are welcome to join us. No children, no one, if a person does not feel comfortable coming to shul, we're absolutely not pushing or encouraging anyone to come. We are providing shul because there are many that want to go to shul. And if a person is healthy and they keep the proper social distance, and we're going to be enforcing everyone wears masks. And I spoke to Henry, our cleaning guy, today at great length. He actually came to meet me today, and I showed him everything I want to clean. He's going to come with his a friend for several hours on Wednesday night to disinfect the entire shul. And I'll come later, make sure the chairs are set up 8 feet apart and all that. Those who are healthy should come to shul. At the end of the day, coming together to pray with a minyan, and especially to hear the Torah reading, especially in Shavuos, is very important. If you feel up to it, please register on the website so I can keep track. We're limiting it to 30 people because in order to keep the proper distance between people, that's how many people we can fit into our sanctuary with the proper distancing. 30 adults. First come, first serve. Go online and register so I can keep track. And we'll have the services. It'll be shorter. There'll be no sermon. There'll be no, Yutin Aliyahs. We're going to make it move faster. There's less time that we're indoors. Shavuos is a very special Torah reading. Very special. Why is it special? Because it is the reading describing the coming of the 10 Commandments, etc., and the actual reading of the 10 Commandments. The Rebbe would very much encourage that every single person should be part of the reading of the 10 Commandments, that every single person should go to shul, not only men, but also women and children and even babies who don't understand what's going on should be in shul during the reading of the 10 Commandments. And for that reason, we're going to be doing a second reading, if it does not rain, outdoors, where kids can come as well. It will only be an outdoor minyan. We're not doing it indoors. We're disinfecting between each service, by the way, and we're not going to do it indoors. And I don't have kids inside. We're going to keep the kids room closed. If it rains, we might have to cancel, and that's the weather forecast. So we'll see how that pans out. But what we are doing this year, and I want to talk about this, this is very important. We are trying to encourage every single Jew in Coral Springs, so everyone's watching, to join us together in reading the 10 Commandments at home, if you don't join us, at the same time. So the plan is I take that back. I paid someone that's printing a beautiful do-it-yourself Shavuos booklet. I don't have it yet. I hope I'm going to get it tomorrow. It's a beautiful guide. It has some articles in this and different readings, and it has the entire Torah reading for Shavuos, plus some short little tidbits on the 10 Commandments. It's done very nicely with graphics. It's on nice paper. And we will be giving this out completely free of charge to anyone that wants, anyone that is willing to sit at home and create their own Shavuos service at home, where they will be part of the celebration of God giving us 10 Commandments. You can go to the website and keep track. We have a limited number of booklets available. We're 125 of them. We're going to need some for the shul as well for the outdoor service. And we'll be glad to give you a book that you can take to your home and you can sit around your kitchen table with no worry about any kind of disease or etc. and create your own Shavuos experience at home. You can do it anytime during the day. We're writing 5 o'clock, because this way families that are working, families that one of the parents is not home, either come to the shul or sit at home, whatever is more comfortable, wherever you're holding, that's what you should do. There's absolutely no pressure. In fact, as I explained on Facebook, we're actually spending a lot of money to enable people to do this at home, because it's very important that you should, on a spiritual sense, be connected to the fact that today, not today, but Friday is a day that God gave us the Torah. In addition, besides for giving out these booklets that you can either come to shul or at home, you can read the 10 Commandments, we will also be giving out prepackaged individual ice cream cones or cheese babkas that Chana is making. We almost had a crisis. Chana ordered 35 pounds. Just so you should appreciate what kind of Eishes Chayil and righteous Rebbetzin in our community is blessed to have. 35 pounds, just a feta cheese for the cheese babkas, not including a whole case. I'm not sure how many pounds are in the case of cream cheese. and we got our order today. And the right now, as I speak, she's actually making the dough. The dough's gonna go in the fridge the night before. She's trying different recipes. 35 pounds of feta cheese didn't show up in our order, and the whole what she wants to make. So we had to get a special thing because it's hard to get. There's actually a shortage of Chalav Yisrael cheese nationally. There's actually a shortage. We have to find a different place and spend more money. But we ordered it. We're going to get to gobbling tomorrow 35 pounds of feta cheese, which is instead of ricotta cheese, which tastes better. And we have the cream cheese, and she ordered the butter already. And she's going to make beautiful homemade cheese babka muffins. The reason for the dairy, the reason for the ice cream cones or for the cheesecakes, etc. So it's all the way. We have people watching our classes all the way from Australia, people watching from New York, from Orlando. After the last class, I got like a bunch of messages from all over where people are watching, and it's very gratifying to know that the word of Torah is spreading out all over the world. So the deal is as follows. Why do we have a custom to eat cheesecake and cheese muffins and ice cream and all of that? So there's several reasons why the custom is to eat dairy. The classic ones are because on the first time that we received the Torah, which was on Shavuos, was when we found out all these laws of how to shecht an animal, how to slaughter an animal to be kosher, and the laws of salting the meat so that there should be no blood inside the meat, and the laws of separating meat and dairy and cooking and all this stuff. Now, the original giving of the Torah, when the Jews received the Torah at Mount Sinai, that day of the week was Saturday, it was Shabbos. That's the day of the week when the Jews received the Torah, Shabbos. On Shabbos, you are not allowed to slaughter an animal to eat it. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to prepare an animal, to cook an animal, to salt the animal. So all of a sudden, the Jews, all their meat that they had prepared was now not kosher. It was never kosher. It wasn't slaughtered by Jews. It wasn't salted. It wasn't done in the proper way. They had nothing to eat. The only thing that they could eat that didn't require preparation that was forbidden on Shabbos was milk, dairy products. They had fresh milk by their cow. Milk, as long as it's not mixed with anything else, is a kosher, doesn't require any cooking or anything. And therefore, on the original Shavuos, on the original day when the Jews received the Torah at Mount Sinai, the Jewish people ate milk, they ate dairy. And therefore, we have a custom to eat dairy as well, to remember that. Another reason why we eat dairy is because the Torah is compared to milk. Torah is compared to water. Water flows down. I guess we drink water on Shavuos too. But Torah is also compared to chalav, to milk. Just like milk is critical for allowing a child to develop nutrients and that the bones should go strong, etc. And a child, today you have formula which replaces milk, but otherwise a child cannot grow and cannot develop without milk. So too a Jew needs spiritual milk for his bones to grow. And that spiritual milk of a Jew is the study of Torah. Another reason why we eat dairy is because the Hebrew word for milk is chalav. Chalav is spelled with 3 Hebrew letters, ches, lamed, beis. And if you're familiar with the idea that every Hebrew letter is also a number in Hebrew, so those 3 letters, ches, lamed, beis, have a numerical value of 8 plus 30 plus 2, which is 40. So the Hebrew word chalav has a numerical equivalent of 40. And Moshe was on the mountain, Moses was on the mountain to receive the Torah for 40 days. And to remember the 40 days that it took Moses to receive the entire Torah on Mount Sinai, we eat dairy to remind us of those 40 days. Okay, there's actually more reasons, but we're actually a little bit late on time here. I'm going to talk about Yizkor still, so we're going to stop with that. I do just want to say that there is still a mitzvah to have meat on Shavuos as well, and therefore ideally you should have a dairy meal, wait an hour, then have a meat meal. But if not, it's okay. Definitely, it's a custom to have dairy, to have ice cream. That's why for those that will not be able to come to the shul, I'm just asking go onto our website because we will not be able to keep track of who's getting, who's coming. If we don't have it all in one form, I can keep track of it. Go to mychabadcenter.org/Shavuos. Again, our website, mychabadcenter.org/SHAVUOS. And there's no charge. Obviously, donations are very much appreciated and needed, but there's absolutely no charge. Go ahead, however many members of your family, if you have 3 kids at home, get ice creams. If you would like ice cream, if you would prefer to get Chana's homemade, I mean, which person would rather ice cream over Chana's baking? But if you like ice cream, whatever it is, we ordered a lot. And again, if you want to sponsor, it's very, very much appreciated. You can reserve it. We are also making kids crafts. We have a 8-page booklet. It's a board game with stories and a special holiday mission. What else is in there? Some kind of forgot there was something else in there as well. That is like a whole package of things for kids to do, including the board game. My wife bought pieces for the game. So if you have any kids at home, as I mentioned before, the Rebbe felt very, very strongly about involving the children in the holiday of Shavuos. Pesach, everyone knows that it's all about the children, the 4 questions, and the hiding the afikomen, etc. But on Shavuos, it's kind of forgotten. The Rebbe would very often quote a very, very famous story in the Medrash. The story is that when God was going to give the Jewish people the Torah, before he gave it to them, he said, who will be the guarantors that the Torah will not be forgotten? And at first, the Jews promised the rabbis as the guarantors. And God said, that's very nice. Rabbis are wonderful, of course, but that is not a good guarantee that Judaism will continue. Rabbis can give boring sermons, everyone falls asleep, and no one listens. So then they promised the scribes as the guarantors. God said, no, thank you. They promised the elders of the Jewish people as guarantors. God said, no, thank you. And finally, they said, our children will be the guarantors of the future of Yiddishkeit, and that's when God agreed to give the Torah. And therefore, it's very important that the children are part of this celebration, and remembering how God gave us the 10 Commandments on the holiday of Shavuos. That's why we have the ice cream for them as well, and the kids' craft. So definitely the same thing. It's all free of charge. I just need people to register so I know how many to print. It costs money to print it. As long as we know people will take it, we are glad. It's our mitzvah to print it, have it available. I see a very beautiful comment on Facebook from Beth that I completely agree with. Chana truly is a beautiful woman inside and out. I say that firsthand. The amount of work she does in between teaching and preparing and cooking that she does is absolutely amazing. And yes, God shall bless her. Originally, I was just going to get ice cream cones and she wouldn't make anything this week. She's making chals every week, but I couldn't stop her in the end. She's doing ice cream and she's still baking. Okay. Something else that I'll be giving out is Yizkor books. That's the second day of the holiday. Let's talk about the second day of Shavuos now for a second. By the way, if you're not able to get out, or if you want to volunteer and bring these gift items, these giveaways, the Yizkor book and the Torah reading book and ice cream cones and all that, the homemade cheese babkas, please let me know. And I will be glad to arrange it. I have a lot of people I want to, it's our job, it's our mission to share the spirit of Shavuos, to enable a Shavuos at home to everyone and anyone that we can. So besides for donating, if you want to actually volunteer and help bring to some of your neighbors, if you're going to come and go to some of your neighbors, that'll be great. Okay, let me talk about, it's already like almost 8:30, 8:20, we have a few minutes. Let's just very quickly talk about the second day of the holiday of Shavuos. So Friday night, this year it's like any Friday night, this is Shabbat, is also Shavuos, the second day of Shavuos. Unlike a normal holiday where we light candles on the second night of the holiday after the first day is over, you are not allowed to light a candle on Shabbos. So therefore, you have to make sure to light the candles on Friday before Shabbat begins, meaning before 7:50. You have to light them before 7:49, rather, to light the candles. And you make the blessing when you light the candles, both for Yom Tov and for Shabbos Kodesh. You include both in one blessing. You make the Shehachiyanu blessing again the second day, even though you made it the first night. We don't want to make the second night less important than the first night. So we say the Shachayanu Batzim again. We make the Kiddush, etc. The regular, we say the holiday Kiddush, not the Shabbat Kiddush. But in the holiday Kiddush, there are additional lines that we add in for Shabbat. Same thing, Friday night dinner, whatever you serve, your chicken soup, your gefilte fish, whatever you're serving for dinner. On Saturday, besides for being Shabbat, is the second day of the holiday. The reason why there's 2 days of the holiday is like all holidays, because in the times of the temple, we didn't know which day of the month would be the 15th day of the month, because in the times of the temple, there was no set, fixed calendar. The way that the Jews knew what day, Rosh Chodesh, what day was the first day of the month, was dependent upon witnesses coming to the court, sitting in the temple, and telling the Sanhedrin, the great court in Israel, that we saw the new moon and being tested and being proven to be honest witnesses. So people outside of Israel wouldn't know which day was the first day of the month. Therefore, they wouldn't know which day was the 15th day of the month. So they wouldn't know which day was Pesach, so there's 2 days of Pesach. Now, Shavuos is not on the day of the month. Shavuos is celebrated on the 50th day of the Omer, which would mean theoretically, and actually I could get into a whole discussion about this, but let's keep it simple. Shavuos, let's just say there was no fixed calendar. Now there is, so this is a theoretical, hypothetical case. But hypothetically, if there wouldn't be a fixed calendar, Shavuos could be a day earlier in the month of Sivan. If the Rosh Chodesh, Sivan only has 1 day of Rosh Chodesh. But if there'll be 2 days of Rosh Chodesh Sivan, Shavuos will be a day earlier in the month. Still be on the 50th day from Pesach, but a day earlier on the month of Sivan. Understand? If Iyar would have only 1 day of Rosh Chodesh instead of 2 days, Shavuos would be a day later. So the reason every single Jew would know what day is Shavuos, 50 days after the first day of Pesach. So why do we have 2 days for Shavuos? I hope my question is clear. The fact that we have 2 days of Pesach or 2 days of Rosh Hashanah or 2 days of Sukkot is because the day of Pesach is dependent upon the rabbis establishing what day is the new moon. But Shavuos has nothing to do with a day on the calendar. Shavuos has to do with the counting of the Omer. So why do we have 2 days of Shavuos? There's no doubt which day is the right day. Nevertheless, the reason is that the rabbis have a rule in Jewish law called loy plug. We don't make distinctions, because then it gets complicated. People say, well, this holiday is like this, and that holiday is like this. And therefore, every holiday is the second day, in outside is the second day, so too Shavuos is a 2-day holiday. On this second day of Shavuos, besides for the regular holiday prayers, the whole regular Shabbat service, the Torah reading, and we say Hallel. I didn't say this about the first day, but we say Hallel, which are prayers of thanks and praise to Hashem. Very important mitzvah. It's a mitzvah, by the way, in and of itself, even if you don't do all the prayers, just to make the blessing and say the 5 chapters of Psalms that are the chapters of the Hallel, chapters 114 through 118 is also a special mitzvah. But after the Torah reading is Yizkar. Now, obviously, it is better to say Yizkar in Shul. You have the Kedusha, you have the holiness and the sanctity and the energy of the minyan and of the Shul and of the Torahs. And when you say Yizkar with the cantor and the Torah, it's obviously more beautiful and more meaningful. However, there is no halachic obligation to say Yizkar with a minyan. I'm telling you the honest truth. Even though rabbis don't pretend like you have to come to the synagogue, you don't really have to come to Shul for Yizkar. You're not saying Kaddish or something that requires a minyan. And therefore, in a year like this year where it's harder, obviously, again, we will be having services in the Shul. There's Rat Hashem, all stays well. And right now, there hasn't been any major uptick. I'm following the data. As long as everything stays more or less stable, there will be services, and we will do all the names that are in the Yizkar book will be read in the Shul for Yizkar. By the way, I should say, which was never publicized, but on Pesach, even though we didn't have services in the Shul, there was one person, not me, I didn't go to Shul, but there was one person who went to Chabad on Pesach, who read all of the names that are in the Yizkar book were read on Pesach as well, but that's something else. So we will have a service. But if you are not able to come to shul in the morning for the Yizkor service, that's okay. We will be giving out Yizkor books as well. We have printed Yizkor books. We have plenty from the high holidays. Next year, we're making a new book anyway, so I have no need to keep them. Come to the shul on Thursday, anytime between 2 and 4, or if you need to come a little bit a different time is also fine. And we'll be glad to give you a Yizkor book when you are at home, sometime on Shabbat. First of all, sorry, I forgot to say this. Friday, before you light your Shabbat candles, before, you have to light, once you light Shabbat candles, you cannot light any more candles anymore. Before you light Shabbat candles, from a pre-existing flame, you should not light a match. You should take from the oven, if the oven is on, or from a yahrzeit candle that you light on Thursday, so that you have a match, you have a fire to light a match on Friday. You should light your Yizkor candle on Friday. And sometime on Saturday morning, on Shabbat morning, you should read the Yizkor prayer that's in the book. Obviously, you say the names of any family members you need to say. You should give the charity that you pledged. You can give before Yizkor, before the holiday. You can do it after the Yizkor. That's fine. We will be doing on Wednesday night, since we're already doing announcements, Wednesday night at 8, I think at 8 o'clock, we're joining Chabad.org. We'll be hosting a pre-Yizkor service with a very good cantor, as well as a holiday sermon from Rabbi Moshe Brisky, who spoke actually for us last week, who's a phenomenal speaker. So we'll be doing and reading names, etc., and all that on the Yizkor service as well. That's as far as Yizkor. The end of the holiday is over at 8:47. We end the holiday by saying Havdalah. Since it's Saturday night, we use both the candle for the Borim Ori Ha'esh and the Besamim, the spices. We drink the wine, and that is in an hour. Practical, do-it-yourself, Shavuos from start to finish. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to call me. Again, go to our website to reserve all of our Shavuos giveaways. An email will go out tomorrow with the link as well. God should bless each and every one of us to merit, as the blessing among Hasidim goes, to receive the Torah b'simcha u'b'pnimius, which means that we should receive the Torah with joy, and we should receive it internally. Internally means that we should receive the Torah. Yeah, there's a Torah. The Torah is a beautiful story. It's a nice thing. Some ancient relic of history. It was a beautiful, beautiful story. I went with a story that I shared at the Hebrew school graduation last week. It's not a true story, but it's a story that happened, if you understand what I'm saying. It's not a true story, meaning that we don't know the story, because the story I'm going to tell you is a story that happened not with a person, but with a Torah scroll. But I'm sure that the story has actually happened as I'm about to say it. There was a Torah scroll, there's a beautiful song describing the journey and the life story of a Torah scroll that was written by a very righteous, pious scribe, whose name, like my name, was Yankele the scribe. I'm not a scribe, but Yankele the scribe. He lovingly writes a beautiful Torah. And on the day the Torah is completed, there's a beautiful celebration in the shtetl in Kiev, this Torah was. And all the Jews gather and they dance in the streets. And the rabbi himself holds the Torah high for everyone to see and to kiss the Torah. And then they all dance together the Torah to the little wooden shul. And there, before the rabbi puts the Torah into the Aron Kodesh, into his little home, the rabbi is lovingly holding the Torah close to his chest and says, my friend, live by the Torah, treasure the Torah. It's a precious treasure, every word in the Torah. And the Torah is a very happy Torah. 3 times a week we read the Torah, and he watches the children being named of the Torah. He watches the bar mitzvahs and the weddings and the ufruf. Everything is beautiful. He watches the old men die. He watches the children die. Until the day comes, Nazis come to Kiev, Nazis come, and the hatred comes, and there was a Shamash Moshe that takes his Torah and he hides it. He buries it in a cellar, hidden away, somewhere where no one would see the Torah. Everyone is forced to run away. They're rounded up, taken away. And the Torah is waiting and waiting and waiting all alone in this dark, cold cellar. When will someone take him back home to his place? Years go by, years. And finally, one day he is found. The Torah is found. And the Torah is so excited to say, what a precious treasure. What a special find to find the Torah from before the war, hidden in the basement for so many years. We're going to send this Torah to America. America. Torah's excited, go to America. When he comes off the boat in America, the men that take him off the boat are not the kind of Jews he was expecting to see. They're not wearing a yarmulke, they don't treat him with proper reverence, and they're not holding him carefully. And instead of bringing him to a little wooden shul and an Aron Kodesh somewhere where he would be treasured and read from and studied and revered, they put the Torah on a glass display. They put him in a glass box in the museum. And across the shelf, across the room, he sees old silver candlesticks. He sees a brass menorah. And people come into the museum and they look at the menorah and they look at the Torah and they say, how beautiful, what a stunning work of art, what nice penmanship. But they know not what's inside the heart of the Torah. They don't appreciate what it is. They're looking at this poor Torah trapped, imprisoned in a glass box. And the Torah continues to cry, just like it did when it was forgotten in a cold cellar somewhere in Kiev. The Torah now in a beautiful, well-lit, air-conditioned, fancy glass box continues to cry and say, when will someone come and take me home and cherish me and hold me close to their chest and say, live by the words of the Torah. So this is the blessing that we give each other before the holiday of Shavuos. We should merit to receive the Torah. We should merit to receive the Torah with joy, with an appreciation and a gracious gratefulness to Hashem for the unbelievable gift, the matana, the gift that God gave us called the Torah. Not only should we appreciate the gift that God gave us, we should internalize it. We should recognize that this Torah, kihem chayenu va'arach yameinu, the Torah is our life and the length of our days. The Torah is our very identity. I said before, Torah is compared to milk. Torah is compared to water. Torah is our life. Torah is who we are. And when we receive the Torah with joy and receive the Torah internally, we will truly merit to become one with the Torah. And when we are one with the Torah, then we will be one with the Nosin HaTorah, with the giver of the Torah, and we will truly be one with God Himself. My friends, good night. A good Yom Tov.